Welcome back to Gone Outdoor Radio. You're listening on Kello News Talk or KWSN or the Mighty 790 KFGO. Scotty Brewer, Kyle Agri of Brewer Agri Outdoors, and we're going to chat with an old friend of ours, Mr. Jason Mitchell of Jason Mitchell Outdoors. How you doing, Jason?
Hey, I'm doing great. How about you guys?
We are doing great. And if any of our listeners know anything about Jason Mitchell, they know that you absolutely love to fish and you really, really love to ice fish. So,
Yes.
and that you make your home up in the Devil's Lake Basin. First thing a lot of our listeners are going to want to know, if they know that we have you on, is what's the ice starting to look like up on the Devil's Lake Basin?
Well, it varies, which is typical, right? I mean, Lake Irving, Lake Alice, the feeder lakes north of Highway 2 have been froze over the longest and have the most ice. And then, you know, Pelican Lake has got ice. You get it seems like Devil's Lake freezes on the west end, and then, the main lake, East Bay, East Devil's Lake, that's still been open all week, and so that'll freeze over. That's going to take a lot more.
You
So
know,
yeah, it's going to be a while before we're out on the main lake or East Bay, but uh, people are just starting to get out on like Irving, Alice, some of those areas, and it's obviously walking out. I mean, it's like right now, there's 3 inches of ice every night when it gets cold out. We're going to be making ice, but it's going to be foot traffic here for a little bit, where you're going to have to pick your way out the spud bar, drag a sled, and get out there by walking.
and hopefully Mother Nature is nice to us and she doesn't give us any more snow, because that will really help people kind of identify areas that just froze over. It'll really make it a lot better off as far as ice safety, which is the reason why we
Yeah.
wanted to have you on to talk a little bit about ice safety. First of all,
Yeah.
before people go, what are some very important safety gear items? Because if they don't have it when they get there, they're not going to get it after they get there. What are some important safety gear items all ice anglers should have when they head out on first ice?
What I always tell people is, well, first off, pick and choose your battles. Like a lot of times, I'm trying to get out areas that I can walk to. I don't have to walk that far, and just kind of picking places close to the access where I'm not walking out that far. Ice cleats to me are a big thing. A lot of times ice is slippery at early ice. Especially at this. Right now we've got a little bit of snow on the ice, but we get plenty of wind, or the wind's going to blow that off. And the reality is that right now when we've got these cold nights, and you're in an area where they say there's 4 inches, 6 inches of ice, 3 inches of ice, whatever, you're more likely to get hurt by slipping and falling than anything. Okay, and so ice cleats to me are really important when you have to walk out on the ice and you drag your gear. The next thing you have to have is a spud bar or an ice chisel. And basically, you just hit the ice as you walk, and you hit the ice ahead of you. And typically, if you have a good hard whack, I mean, it's going to go through 1.5 inches of ice. Okay. And if you see the water come up in that crack, or if it just gets wet or stains a hole, well, then you're not dealing with as much ice. And typically, 2 or 3 good hard whacks with a spud bar, what it's going to take to pop through 3 inches of ice, depending on the spud bar. But a spud bar and ice cleats are the number one things that you should not go out there without, in my opinion. Uh, Other things, obviously there's float suits, there's ropes, throw ropes, different things like that. But sometimes, you know, a float suit, for example, doesn't give you a license to be stupid. Okay, if you've ever fallen through the ice, especially if you're over your head, it takes everything you've got to get out. And I would guess that a lot of people aren't even good enough shape to get out. Okay, from a physical standpoint. And once you do get out, you're not going to have the dexterity to get the keys out of your pocket to start your pickup. Okay, nothing works once you fall through and you come back out. Because you're so cold. It's like you're like there's no, you can't grab things with your hands. I mean, it's just you're not even able to zip your jacket. Okay, and so the whole deal is you do everything you can so you don't fall through. Float suit. I've often told people this. I know this probably sounds harsh, but more often than not, a float suit just enables you to recover the body easier. Okay.
Hmm.
I don't think people understand how horrible it is and how difficult it is when you fall through the ice, especially when it's cold. And so, ice picks, cleats, that's number one. Number two, throw rope, again, that's not for you, because if you fall through, you're not going to be doing nothing with that rope. It's if you happen to encounter somebody else that needs help. Um, so the throw ropes, the float suits, I think some of that's a little bit fluff, make you feel good. But at the end of the day, if there's something you got to have that you can't live without, it's that Spud bar.
Jason, talk a little bit about the effect that waterfall have on ice. If I've seen anything over the last number of years, it's the variation in ice thickness that they can cause or create in those situations, and I think it's good for our listeners to understand that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, in some places there might be springs, or there might be some moving water, like underneath an old road bed, or there's a culvert, for example. Those things can create pockets of poor ice. But a lot of times those spots are fairly small, whereas the waterfall, absolutely. I mean, you might have 4 inches, 6 inches of ice, and then hit an area that's, say, 2 acres, just random, that has an inch and a half, 2 inches of ice, because there was 700 Canada geese huddled up there a week prior. And so, yeah, that's a big thing, especially like in a lot of these Dakotas, these prairie pothole dish bowl lakes, that we do so much ice fishing in. Well, in the fall, there's major concentrations of ducks and geese in some of these spots, and they'll keep areas open. I remember a couple years ago, it was really an eye opener for me. We were down, just down in that Jamestown area, and we were hitting some small sloughs, lakes for walleyes, and there was a pretty good walleye bite going on, and there was about 7-8 inches of ice, and it was good ice. And it was just a deal where we were just starting to bring my side by side out on the ice. And it was 8 inches of ice everywhere, and we were fishing, and we were catching a few fish, but you just kind of tell that the spot was kind of drying out. It's getting to be a lot of people fishing along the shoreline. And I thought, God, there's a lot of lake here. Let's go do a little exploring and just push a little bit further away and just get away from where people have been fishing all winter. And a deal where people were just walking out and catching fish, again, close to where they could walk to, and then that area kind of got expanded. And anyways, we came around a point, and there was kind of a weird ridge line. It wasn't really a pressure ridge, but it was just a ridge line, and there's a little bit of snow on the ice, but it had been kind of blowing, and it just looked different past that little ridge on the ice. And I just like, God, that looks funny. And so I just stopped and started drilling some holes. I had 8 inches where the machine was sitting, and I just went ahead 8 inches, 8 inches, then it went like 6, and then I went on the other side of that ridge and popped a hole in 3 inches.
Wow.
Thinking, whoa, this is peculiar. Like, why would this be? Well, I got to talking to some locals, and they were, yeah, 10 days ago, there was like, you wouldn't believe it, there was like 10,000 snow geese out of that lake. And, and well, I'm sure that's what it was, is those geese kept that area open. And if I would have just seen it and stopped and checked it, we would have drove into that with a side-by-side, and there's no doubt we would have fell through. You can't go wrong being a little paranoid. Like, just if something looks funny, stop and check.
Yep.
Just don't assume. And especially if you ice fish a lot, you got to roll that way, because sooner or later it's going to catch up to you.
So one thing that we always preach, Jason, which I really want to make sure we get in here, is you always want to check your own ice. Just because you see somebody out there, don't put your life in somebody else's hands and just go driving nilly-willy around the lake. Jason, we got to finish up here. If people want to find you, if they want to follow along with you this winter, where can they find you at?
Probably the easiest, best, fastest way is just go right on YouTube, Jason Mitchell Outdoors, or any of our social media channels. So.
Perfect. This is Jason Mitchell. Thanks for coming on Gone Outdoors. We really appreciate it.
You bet. Good luck, guys.
Stick around. We'll be back with the second half of today's show after the short break. Looking for somewhere to get all your fishing information in one place? onX Fish Midwest has something for you. Search for new fishing areas with filtering features such as species, abundance, trophy potential, lake survey info, regulations, and area insights are just a click away.
Getting to your target lake has never been easier with access points and public land ownership clearly marked on OnX Fish. Mark and customize waypoints and weather for your exact location. Use code BA Outdoors to get 20% off OnX Fish Midwest at onxmaps.com.